Jackson. I'm going to repeat that. 37 and a quarter. Curry for the lead.
Hey everyone, welcome to an all-new Dubs Talk presented by Wendy's. Right now at Wendy's, get 2 breakfast sandwiches for just $4, and we have a great show for you today. Grant Liffman alongside Kendra Andrews, and very shortly we'll be bringing in Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, Kirk Lacob, obviously for the Golden State Warriors, and he can talk a little bit about what the Warriors are looking for in the draft, the type of player that they want. He, of course, will tell us exactly who they're trading for and exactly who they're selecting. So it'll be a real nice, a nice moment for all of us to just be aware before anyone else is. What do you think, Kendra?
Absolutely. I mean, I think after this podcast, no one has to watch the draft. No one has to, come up with any more trade rumors. Your summer's over. This podcast is going to answer every single one of the questions, because that's exactly what front office personnel do.
Yes.
Before the draft.
Exactly. No, you nailed it. And but everyone, please keep listening to us. Make sure to download and follow Dubstock. So Kendra, this is with the NBA Finals going in full swing here. This is interesting. The odds are being put out there for next season already, and I want to bring up a couple of them before we get to Kirk. And that starts with the odds to win the title next season. So these odds are powered by our partners at PointsBet Sportsbook, and according to them, the I almost call them the New Jersey Nets. They haven't been New Jersey. Were you even alive when they're called New Jersey? Okay, let me.
That was a long time ago.
The Nets.
Yourself. You keep aging yourself throughout these podcasts, Grant.
The Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson Nets. Those Nets, right?
Remember that?
Yeah.
The original Big Three over on that side of the country.
Yeah, the original Big Three. Okay, so the Brooklyn Nets are favored at plus 250, and then it really dives from there. So they're heavy favorites, followed by the Lakers at plus 650. So, they're relying on star power. They're saying the Nets, with the power that they have with KD, Harden, and Kyrie locked up for next season, then obviously they should be up there. The Lakers, everyone's just assuming a LeBron that's a little older and that AD will be healthy, but they also assume the Lakers will make some moves to make themselves a little better. After that, it actually gets really interesting because they have the Bucks at plus 800, the Bucks who are currently in the finals. They have the Warriors at plus 900, tied with the current Phoenix Suns, who are in the finals right now at plus 900, followed by the Jazz, the 76ers, and then the Clippers. Now, Kendra, what's interesting about that, the Clippers were plus 700. They were third to win the title next year until Kawhi had that partial ACL tear surgery, which is honestly a gigantic deal. And I don't think enough people are making a big deal enough about it, because that just might have changed the landscape of the whole NBA. We don't know if he's out 6 months to a year or so. So But anyway, I don't know. What's your biggest takeaway when you look at that? Because they think the Warriors are going to be good.
The first thought, the Warriors, it's very interesting, but the first thing that I think of when I look at these standings is how much I think the people who are making these the standings and the odds, that's the word I'm thinking of, the people who are making the odds, how big of a factor I think health is playing into it. Because remember, Grant, before Brooklyn was riddled with injuries, before LA was riddled with injuries, those two teams were supposed to be in the finals right now. And apparently, if those two teams are healthy, they're better than the Bucks and the Suns, the teams that are in the finals right now. And I mean, heading into this year's finals, I thought that it was going to be Brooklyn and LA in the finals as well. So I think just looking at that and how big health, COVID protocols, injuries played into what happened this year, I think they're almost thinking the inverse of if everyone's healthy, that's what's going to happen next year. As for the Warriors being tied with the Suns, I mean, it is a little shocking to me, because I don't know about you, Grant, but right now watching the Suns, they're so good. They are so good. Yes, the Bucks figured them out in game 3. We're recording this just ahead of game 4. So who knows what's going to happen. We'll be watching after we record this, but I don't, looking at on paper right now, I don't think that the Warriors are necessarily going to be as good as the Suns, especially if the Suns are continuing what they've been able to put together throughout these playoffs. We have talked so many times. Yes, Klay Thompson should be coming back eventually. We don't know when, and highly, highly doubtful he's going to be the Klay Thompson we all remember right when he gets back. There needs to be grace period for him. So saying that they have the same odds as a team that very well might be the defending champions come this time next year, it's a big projection. I don't know if I'm quite sold on that yet.
Yeah, it is a big projection, but honestly, it comes down to two things. They obviously are thinking Klay Thompson will change a lot for the Warriors. That's number one. And number two is they think the Warriors have the assets in the drive to potentially make big splashes. They're probably thinking that, hey, maybe the Warriors are going to land a star and be that much better. So those are the things that are kind of coming into this. And to be fair, there's probably Warriors fans that just assume they also will be up there contending as well. But there's also a great big segment of the fan base that just has their doubts about this team right now. They want to, they like, prove it to me, make me believe with the roster construction that you do, with whatever changes you make, that you become that contender again. So it's I think they're fascinating odds. Especially the Jazz. The Jazz were very good this last year, but they burned out again in the playoffs, and that's why they're probably skeptical about the Jazz. The 76ers, exact same situation. So you can see them falling, but I do find it interesting about the Lakers. They're really putting a lot into LeBron James, who again is just going to be a year older, and there's a lot of money there. So the Lakers would have to make some serious changes because there are a lot of other teams that will be getting better. But Kendra, the Clippers falling off that far, that changes things when you look at the West just in general. Now, if you watch the Clippers in the playoffs, they did great work. Paul George was incredible. Reggie Jackson stepped up. But to rely on that team a full season of the regular season and say, unless they make some big changes, that's, just relying on those guys might be difficult to get to the top of the West. So that changes things, right? The order is shuffling around. The Blazers aren't in there because they're assuming that Damian Lillard and other things are going to change. The team that kind of caught me off guard, not in there, the Mavericks, or the Nuggets.
Yeah, I was going to say Denver as well.
It's interesting. They truly believe that those teams might be around where they're going to be again, and think that a team like the Warriors is just going to jump right back into it. So it's always fascinating to see odds like this because there's a lot of algorithms and smart people and everything that goes into this, and they're usually somewhat accurate with these things.
Yeah, I mean, it is. They are. They put a lot. This is what they do. They're experts at what they do and making these odds. And it is going to be very interesting to see how these shift and change throughout this off season. Once the title is won, once the draft happens, once free agency and trades start happening, how this maneuvers and shifts. I completely agree. Seeing the Clippers, fall in these odds as far as they did just by the loss of Kawhi Leonard really just goes to show how important he is to this team and how hard it's going to be for them, no matter what they do. Even if they decide to make a move, you can't make up for what Kawhi Leonard does. And the Clippers have been a team for me that have always just been a step off. They've always been, or not always, but for a very long time through different eras, whether it's the CP3 Blake Griffin era, whether it's this Paul George Kawhi era, they've just been like a step or two off from really, really having it. And now it's an even further step back, as you mentioned, in regards to the Lakers, but also the Clippers, as other teams make moves, as other teams get better. It's just getting harder and harder. Those top 2-3 spots that were once set in stone of who they were going to be has now completely busted open, as well as the middle of the West. So it's an interesting thing, but the thing that I believe that the Warriors are going to be better. I 100% believe that. To me, the thing that trips me up is that they have the same odds as the Phoenix Suns. So in my mind, I'm just trying to figure out what puts them at the same odds. Are the Suns digressing that much and the Warriors progressing that much? Or is there something that I'm just not seeing? And that could very well be the case. But to me, that is very, very interesting to see them have the same odds.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny though that you just use the word digress when it's regress. just like I did that one time.
Well,
Was that me last time?
it was you.
That was me last time.
I digress then. Sorry.
I digress. Yeah, it's regress. I was the one. I'm sorry. I'm rubbing off on you, and I'm ruining it for everybody. It's my fault. It's my fault. Blame me, Kendra.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do find it surprising a little bit. I think what surprises me most about the odds are in relation to the MVP rankings that are right now, because they have Luka Doncic, understandably, as the favorite to be the MVP. But as we have seen, usually the best teams, regular season or whatever, gets an MVP award, right? That you have to be on a really good team in the regular season. So they don't have the Mavericks in the top rankings for winning a title, but they do have Luka as the favorite to win the MVP. So in that case, they're thinking that the Mavericks are a great regular season team, and they don't think of them as much as a contender in that regard. After that, they have Joel Embiid. Again, the Sixers are lower on that list than you'd expect. So again, they're looking at these guys saying, this is a regular season team. It goes Luka, Embiid, then Kevin Durant, which makes perfect sense. Kevin Durant's there. Giannis should always be there. Then they have Steph Curry at fifth, which is, at plus 850. That's pretty good odds. That means you put down $10 to win 85, $100 to win 850. After Curry, LeBron James. So therefore, usually LeBron's higher than that. So maybe they are thinking a little age into it. Damian Lillard, they have after that, which I found interesting as well, because where is he playing? We do not know. What are the Blazers at that point? Is he on another team? And finally, just for the sake of it, Klay Thompson's in there at plus 15,000.
Yeah.
So if you put down $100 on Klay Thompson, you can win $15,000 on Klay winning MVP.
I that down.
Not gonna put that money. However, maybe for comeback player of the year, that'd be good for him.
It'd be nice. So yeah, you won't be, when we're in Vegas, you won't be putting your money down on Klay Thompson. That's okay. The thing I'm interested to see first in regards to Luka Doncic, I'm very curious to see how he comes out this season, because following the bubble of last season, there was just a general assumption that he was going to be very high in the MVP race this season. And it kind of started out, but then he did hit those bumps that definitely dragged him back down as other players continue to emerge as front runners. So I'm really interested to see if he's able to kind of complete that breakout that he started, that complete dominance that he started in the bubble, and flirted with at points during the season, but wasn't able to fully grab onto it. As for the rest of them, it is also seeing LeBron James lower in the standings, I think, yes, is a testament to his age, but also just a testament to how other players are really starting to dominate this league. Of course, LeBron James is always going to be King James. That's who he is. He is a dominant player, but it's also just a testament to other guys like Giannis, like KD, being able to consistently be who they are and perform the way that they've been playing. And as far as Steph Curry coming in fifth, that's still good. He finished third. A lot of people believe that he should have won MVP this season. He definitely made a case for it, but still having that top five is still saying that we believe that he has some of it. I am interested, I find it interesting that also Nikola Jokic wasn't in any of the numbers that we just brought up, or any of the names that we brought up. It's just another case of, here's someone who got it this year, was, one of the most dominant players in the league this season. What is that going to look like next year? Jamal Murray is still going to be out for the Nuggets. You mentioned them not being in the list of championship contenders for the odds. So it's going to be interesting seeing how other players are able to match and exceed what Jokic did, especially because Joel Embiid, who was second in the MVP this season, is second again. What does that mean for Jokic? What does that mean for these guys who are going to continue to grow? Because I doubt that he's just going to say, okay, I'm done now. I won MVP. My second best player isn't playing, so it's a wash.
Yeah, I mean, there is always just MVP fatigue, though. Very rarely does a person win back-to-back. Obviously, Curry did because he got that much better. Giannis did because he got that much better. Giannis had a chance of winning it this year, but the fatigue of it, I mean, technically Giannis could have been said was the most dominant player in the league this year. But again, as I said, LeBron would win it every single year in the past if they were doing the best player in the league. There is a fatigue to it, and there's a newness. And so that's why probably Jokic isn't on there as high. As for Curry, if they're as good as the odds are making them as a title contender, then Curry should be higher than top 5, because I'm telling you that the Warriors aren't going to be that good without Curry being an MVP candidate pretty high up there. So, all right, let's go and let's chat with our friend Kirk Lacob here. As always, download and follow Dubs Talk and enjoy this interview. We are lucky enough to be joined by Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations for the Golden State Warriors, Kirk Lacob. And Kirk, I don't have time for tomfoolery here, and there's a lot of charades that media play and trying to get information out of people and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just start off and let's just be blunt. Who are you trading for?
Yeah, I mean, can I be honest? Can I be blunt with you back? If you're going to be blunt, I'll be blunt. Everybody.
Oh, wow.
All of the all-stars in the NBA. Mm-hmm.
A lot of them. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's like our own Infinity Gauntlet deal.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
we'll be the first team with 15 all-stars.
It's a really impressive work. Good job on your part. And then followed by which, who are you selecting at 7 and 14?
That I would have to go into the future.
Okay.
I'm still, my DeLorean's out of service.
Got it.
So, I mean, honestly, my hope, and I thought we were going to talk today about this, and I was just going to ask you who we were taking, because usually you tell me who we're taking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just going to turn this back around on you and ask who we're taking.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I don't want to get anyone in trouble because every time I get you to say something that fines you, I'm always the one that has to pay for it in the end. So I'm not going to throw any names out there. Just read my Twitter and stuff, and you'll find out who to draft. Okay.
Okay. Do people read your Twitter or?
Oh, no. That's why I'm asking you to. You'd be my first follower. So thank you for that.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're asking me. Oh, I thought you were talking about the people watching this are supposed to read your Twitter. No, I'm supposed to. Yeah. Okay. People send me your tweets.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah. I think it's out of look at what this clown is saying. But yeah, I'll read them. Okay. Deal.
Actually, the nicest thing anyone's ever said, just calling me a clown. Okay. So let's jump into this and let's talk win now versus the future, which is a conversation you probably have not heard yet. There are some people throwing that out there as a concept that people, I don't know, are just saying. But, when you look at it, win now versus the future, when you're a front office, do you actually change dramatically the way you select players based on how your team is in that moment? Of course, if you're really tanking or not, I don't want to use that word, losing a lot and rebuilding, sometimes you'll take a guy that's more based way in the future. But otherwise, wouldn't you say that you pretty much select the same way?
I think you should. In practice, yeah, you should. You should take the player you think is going to be the best. Does that always happen perfectly? No, because things aren't that linear. I think when you get players who you rank somewhat similarly, call it a bucket or a tier or something, then things like that, and amongst other reasons, play into it. And, it could be which player do we think is going to be a little bit better sooner, or which player fits a little bit better. But by and large, I mean, my philosophy is that you take the player you think is going to be the best. It's just not always that simple, I guess. But yeah, you certainly hear about it a lot. I mean, it's kind of a funny concept to me that you talk about win now versus not winning now, because the purpose is to win. So yeah, I mean, we're always trying to win and pick good players. Do we always do it perfectly? Absolutely not. I think if you objectively look at how the draft works, most of the players don't make it, as much as we get excited every single year. And this is not trying to get people less excited about the draft, because what is so exciting is the unknown. But the reality is like, and I could pull up the study later if we need, but like, there's a lot of data that says most players who get drafted don't make it like at all. And some make it, but like aren't that good. There's very select few that become impact players. And like, sometimes you have to look at through that lens and remind yourself that it's a little bit like baseball, right? You know, like the guy who hits the ball 3 out of 10 times is the all-star. You know, the one who hits it 2 out of 10 times is at the Mendoza line, and they're like not in major leagues. Drafting's like kind of like that. You know, we remember the big hits, we remember the big misses, but the reality is there are always going to be more misses than hits.
Yeah, except you have that big miss, you know, that one that, you know, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, and we all remember that.
Yeah. We all remember that one. But when we're looking at what you're drafting for, we talk about areas of need. And obviously you mentioned how you take the best player that you think can be available. But whether it's through the draft or free agency or trades or something, you look at the areas you think this roster needs to improve the most. Shooting is always something that everyone wants. But what about, you know, are you looking for more playmakers? How about guys that actually get to the rim and finish a little bit more? Is there something you're looking for?
Yeah. Again, I think it's less of what we specifically are looking to add and more what the NBA values or what you need in the NBA. There are certainly qualities, skills. Some people might call them positions at some level. I'm not a big believer in the traditional positions. I think that it's more those sorts of things that you're looking for. There are certain things that are more valuable in the NBA, and it changes, of course, right? The game changes over time and certain qualities become more valuable. Yeah, it's clear that like our team needs certain things, but you know, you're not necessarily going to find that with a rookie. Most of them aren't that good their rookie year. No offense to whoever we do end up drafting, but you know, even guys who put up stats are usually not great as rookies. So it's, I think we're generally more looking for qualities and skills that are valuable in the NBA. And you know, yeah, you hope that it doesn't overlap too much with what you have, only because there is a human element to it. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you're honest with yourself and you say this player isn't going to be great day one of training camp, you know, trying to predict what a player is going to do best early on, it's just not football. You know, football, everybody plays very specific positions. They do very specific things. They have very specific skill sets. Like even a linebacker, there's 4 types of linebackers. One fits, you know, a very specific type of defensive structure, a very specific thing that a coach wants to do. But those are also older players. You know, you can't enter the NFL draft until you're 3 years out of college. These players can enter, well, now it's much more complicated, right? It used to be 1 year out of college. Now it's whatever, 19 or however you want to define it. But yeah, it's just a different, it's not, basketball is just not as simple. You know, it's a much more dynamic game than like football or baseball. And so you can't kind of, I try not to pigeonhole players, because at the end of the day, you can just be a really good basketball player, and good basketball players playing with good basketball players usually means you're a good basketball team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you've also referenced baseball and football. So in the next answer, I really want
hockey,
to break down,
soccer, football,
curling, maybe
football, curling, yeah, all the Olympic sports.
Exactly. But how about then, just instead of the draft, just where do you think what areas does your team need to improve? Like what type of changes to a roster can help?
We definitely need. I mean, we like our roster, but we need more good players. You always need more good quality players. And what is unique about this year is, you know, I talked about how low the hit rate is in general in the draft. It's especially low when you're past like 2025 every single year. Not an excuse by any stretch. But, you know, we have been lower. It is definitely the better players usually get picked earlier, you know, crazy idea. We have 2 picks in the top 14. That is a unique spot to be in. I don't think it's ever happened in the Warriors history. I think actually we had 2 top 14 picks, but they both weren't lottery picks, if I remember correctly. I think it was Jay Rich at 5 and Troy Murphy at 14, if I'm not mistaken. And then Gilbert Arenas went like 31 or 32 in that draft. But I think that Troy Murphy pick was actually not in the lottery. I think it was 13 teams. Someone can correct me later, I'm sure. But yeah, this is a unique chance to add like long-term talent, guys who in theory are under team control and are going to grow into who they are, and really can be a part of what we're doing. Is that 100% the direction we go? I mean, we don't know what else is out there yet. We're just starting to hear what other options are. But yeah, that's I guess what's unique. You're asking like specifically, what are we looking for? We're looking for guys who can be a long-term piece of the team. Like if you don't think a guy you're drafting can be a long-term piece of the team, like what's the point? I mean, the whole point is when you draft a player, you got them for 4 years if they're drafted in the first round, and then they're restricted after that. So in theory, you got a guy, unless you screw some up, you got a guy for 8 years. So like you might as well get guys who are good for 8 years. Right. Might as well, right?
I think while you're at it, it's a nice thing to have. How much do you factor in like measurables and vertical jump and all that into your decisions?
A little bit.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't look. I've seen players who their athleticism is so poor. Not to name names, but I know of one person who you've worked with a lot who tested as a worse athlete than I did in college. We were at the same college at the same time, and I thought I was going to be the worst athlete on the team, and I was not. Now he was a better player than me, so that alone should tell you. I can't believe I'm admitting that now. He was a better player than me, and so like that should show you it doesn't matter that much. But no, I mean it matters to an extent. It informs your upside potentially. I'm more interested though. Here's the thing: it changes by position too and by skill set. So peeking a little bit behind the curtain, like to me, wingspan is something really interesting, but not for every position necessarily. Like if the way you play the game, doing this doesn't impact things a lot, then I don't care as much. I mean, it's never not important, but like an example, I value standing reach for bigs more than I value standing reach for wings. Like standing for a wing just doesn't matter as much because how often are they playing defense upright at the rim? Some of them need to, no doubt, it's a plus. But like if you're a big and you don't have a standing reach, it is hard to play vertically. Not to say you can't, but it definitely tilts things in that favor. So yeah, I mean, this stuff all matters, but there's ways to cheat on these tests too. I've seen guys do the alligator arms up so that their vert looks bigger. And that's an easy one to figure out. You just look at their standing reach, and if their standing reach is the same as mine was, it's probably not real. If it gives them a giant vert, cool, but like, you don't get extra points for a giant vert. So yeah, I mean, like it matters. I don't want to completely belittle and say it doesn't matter, but like it matters when it matters, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense that there are certain players that you're interested to see if it holds up the measurables that you're interested in, right? You can hone in.
And you need to watch the film too. And like, sometimes you look at a measurable and it's a data point to look back and say, could this person have averaged more, whatever? And sometimes you find like, actually they are better at this thing than I thought, than when I first watched or what the stats bear out. But yeah, some players are what I call like athletic in space. Like if you give them a runway, they look incredible. They look like an Olympic, pole jumper, and they jump out of gym. But the minute you start putting things in their way, it's just not the same. And like, that's an applied athleticism. So yeah, it's not as straightforward as I think people want to make it sometimes. And understandably, there's a lot of nuance to this stuff that like is just complicated and not as fun to talk about. But I don't know. I find it all really fascinating. It's always really fun. We get anthropomorphic measurements and you see all the history of things. And the other thing is, I think we do a really bad job in society as a whole, not saying the worst, comparing like apples to apples. Sometimes we like rank how somebody does in this draft class, but we don't really look at like, how do they compare in terms of standard deviations, like from the mean, like how different are they from others in their class? It's one thing to be above average. It's another thing to be way above average. It's one thing to be below average. It's another thing to be way below a threshold.
Right.
that is sometimes lost. And then to compare to other classes. Now, sometimes this stuff gets really complicated because they don't measure the same every year. I think we saw that actually. I saw an article about how they measured, I think it was the shuttle last year versus all the prior years. And like they had automated lights and stuff versus last year they didn't, and they had to time it. And so they literally told guys which direction to go. And so think about it, if you already know how to do it, your times are going to be faster. And like the times were way faster. So like we no longer can really use that as an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So, you know, with measurables and stuff, you're learning new things about players in the process, but how much you're scouting the whole season, you're watching all these guys all along. And so how much going into these workouts, individual workouts or interviews, are you already being like, I already know what I think about this person, this is just adding to it? Or are there guys, and let's say this year in particular, and again, you don't need to say names, but has there been a player or players who you're like, since we've now been in person and watching him, you're like, wow, this guy is like a lot better than we thought?
The hope is that you go into workouts and interviews and nothing changes. I mean, if you've watched a guy play basketball, that is what his job is. At the end of the day, it's to play basketball. There are definitely very important things you can glean, but usually it's small movements. It's like within a tier set, how do I view this guy versus this guy? I hope that we don't overreact. That in general, people don't. I know they do, but that's the hope, is that you don't overreact to these things. That being said, yes, every few years, there is what I call either like a red light or a green light. Like to me, everybody else is kind of in the middle, and the interviews and the workouts don't really affect my assessment much. But like every once in a while, there's something that happens. You meet a guy, you go through a workout, and there's a major red light. And you're like, uh-oh, whatever we watched before, there's something off now. And it could be that there's an injury that's affected somebody. There could be the system they were playing. Sometimes it is rare. But there are guys you kind of cross off and you're like, it's not going to work. On the other hand, there is the rare occasion where somebody is like so much better than you thought, they start to rethink things. It's really easy for me to use this example with Draymond. Like we really liked Draymond. I think a lot of teams did. We really liked him. But his draft workout and his interview were like otherworldly, to the point where like we kind of started to rethink who we thought this guy was. Now we couldn't have imagined he was going to be as good as he is, but looking back on it, I mean, hindsight's 2020. There's been other examples. That guy's draft workout was, I mean, to this day, we're still talking about it. He dominated in the way you don't see guys dominate, like 3-on-3. And his interview was so memorable. So yeah, it happens. I want to be clear. It is rare. Right. But that's why we do this, right? Because these are $million, like multi-million-dollar decisions. And all our job is to make sure that like we're putting in every piece of info possible, so that you don't miss, one major thing. And we will. I mean, you'll miss things. There's tons of guys who I've been like, man, I did not see that one. But granted, those guys usually went lower, and so it means a lot of teams didn't see it.
Right, exactly. And that is the interesting thing, because we talk about the Draymond Green story and we're like, wow, the Warriors nailed that pick. But then you think about the Warriors also had 2 picks before Draymond Green even selected. So you can pat yourself on the back for doing an incredible job. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you could have picked him before us. It was just
for sure. And I mean, look, that's part of our job too, is intel and value. At the end of the day, like, yeah, if you knew Draymond was going to be an all-star, you're taking him away. You're finding the way to get him early, so that there's no doubt you get him. But this goes back to like even at the time, we debated a lot. Draymond Festus, and at the end of the day, we had intel that told us like Draymond very, very likely to get to 35. Festus not going to get there at 35. Only way we can get both guys is Festus at 30 and Draymond 35. Now, again, if you knew Draymond was you wouldn't even have risked the 10% that he wasn't there. Right. You just said, screw it, we're taking him. But that's a big part of this time period too, is collecting intel on how others view these players, where they might go. Sometimes you're literally at the mercy of like where your draft pick is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times over the years, we've had a guy that we really liked and didn't think we would make it to our pick, or maybe we did think, and then they go 2 picks before you. I mean, that happens constantly, and you're pissed off about it, and you're like, all right, well, this guy will be fine. And then that guy ends up being really good. You're like,
Yeah.
Granted, it happens in the reverse too, right? Where we're not interested in that guy. Maybe I would take him at blah, blah, blah. And so you pass on, and he is really good. So it definitely works both ways.
Yeah, and it is. I always laugh about the Draymond thing too. Every year, people are like, "Oh, who's this year's Draymond Green in the second round?" And I always say to myself, like, if there is this year's Draymond Green, you'll find him in the lottery. If this guy is a Hall of Fame player, you're not.
If we knew he wouldn't be in the second round,
Who's the next Draymond Green? A future Hall of Famer. I want to find him in the second round. No, I think you kind of usually look in the beginning of the draft. All right. So speaking of the beginning of the draft, James Wiseman. Now his name's going to be flying around. Trade rumors, this and that. Just looking back in his first season, very up and down year for a lot of reasons, including just things he couldn't control, right? You had injuries, you had so many different things going against him. People are very hard on any player that's taken at the top of the draft. They compare them to other players.
They should be, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
there's pressure.
There's extra pressure on that person. You're taking them high, you're giving them all this money and all this stuff. And for him, his numbers were a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for, but there were obviously some issues as well that you want to work on, as you would expect from a guy that's incredibly raw that was coming into the league. But when we look forward to next year, you can point at he needs to get better at rebounding, maybe pick and roll defense, maybe like diving at the rim, like DeAndre Ayton type stuff. But could you also say that the coaching staff and the strategy to use him also needs to get better to put him in the right spot?
What was the question? Or is that just a statement? All of that. No, I mean, this is the hard part about all this. Like, we get so excited about the draft and how there's time horizons in all of this. I mean, we don't, especially if you're going to draft a really young player, we don't expect them to be really good right away. I mean, we can't. Now, that doesn't mean the pressure is not there for them to be good. But look, I think James did a lot of things well last year. He struggled in some other things. Kind of exactly what I would have expected from a 19-year-old who played 3 college games and then was training, and then it was the pandemic, and then he couldn't participate in training camp. And, it's like, poor guy, like everything seemed to go well, but like he showed us a lot of really good things that he's going to learn from. And at the end of the day, with all these guys, it's not what you do in year 1. It's what you do in year 2, year 3. Do you show progression? And he's obviously got immense talent, or else we wouldn't have picked him at 2. And so, you believe in the talent, you believe in the player. And this is not, my mom used to use this term, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Now, maybe it's not a full marathon. It's more like a 1,600 meter sort of thing. You need guys to be good, like fairly good. But no, we have a lot of faith that, you just got to put a plan in place for these guys, and you got to hope they keep hitting the check marks. And one day everyone's surprised. And they go, how did that happen? But no, we think James did a lot of what we expected. Can we do better? No question. Across the board. Could we have prepared James better? Could we have prepared the coaches better for, could the coaches know better? Of course, all those things are true, because if they weren't true, the guy would have been like an all-star his rookie year. But right. It's not realistic. So we were really happy. We drafted the guy too. It means we believe in him. And we're really excited to see what next year brings. He's got a great plan of summer work to do. He's obviously recovering from the surgery. It's all going really well. But look, we saw this with Jordan Poole too. He was a later pick, struggled a lot his rookie year, a lot. He'll be the first to admit it. There were a lot of things he had to work on in terms of how he worked, the things he was working on. But man, he put it together, halfway through his second year. And now people are expecting big things out of him, and fairly so. And I think he's like, bring on the challenge. So this stuff is long tail.
It of course, and it's hard. A lot of people, patience is not exactly something that a lot of people practice watching the NBA. And for someone who's raw as him, it will take time. I guess it just it feels like across the board there needs to be an improvement in terms of just himself, and as you'd expect. And then when coaches understand what he does well and as they grow, then they can utilize him in the right way, front office included, right? It's just everyone kind of learns and grows together as you go about.
Yeah, we do. We all learn. Yeah, we learn throughout this part. You learn something every day. Things you could have done better. Things that we can improve in the future. And look, like I said, we've got, I think, a really good plan for all our guys going forward here, and we're excited about that. And hopefully they all hit. That's always the goal. You know, reality is not everybody's gonna be exactly what you thought, and that's okay. But you know, I don't want to say we deserve the benefit of the doubt, because I think this is a what have you done for me lately. But like, you know, if we've done it once before, we have the confidence that we can build guys up and do this again. And we've got a window right now where we need more help. So it's kind of do or die. Like we're going to feel just as crappy if things don't work out as fans are. Probably worse.
Yeah, I can imagine you feeling a little worse as well. Just a few quick questions, just quick answers, right? You don't, you can even get
boom, rapid fire. Okay.
Rapid fire. Don't name names, of course, again, but star available. If stars become available, stars, this person's become available. This guy's on the trade market. When a name comes available, is it pretty much due diligence that no matter what, you guys are going to call and check in and see what this team is all about?
Absolutely. No
Okay.
question. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, why wouldn't you? We wouldn't be doing our job.
Okay. Because every time a name comes available, you hear a report that the Warriors called or talked internally about something or whatever. And
those reports aren't always true, though. Look at the wording of the reports. Sometimes it's expect the Warriors to call. I think the Warriors called, and then it becomes the Warriors call. But yes, the reality is we almost always, we're calling about things that the general public doesn't know about too, like rumors we're hearing. And sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. But yeah, we always do our due diligence. You have to. What else are you doing? What's your job?
Your job is to call. I just want to make
it's our job is to try.
Okay. Yeah, keep trying. And then just in general, Steph Curry, obviously you're going to figure out the whole.
Really good. Yep. Great basketball player.
Oh, that was easy. And moving on. No, the extension, we're going to talk that, whatever, that'll be down the road. But more importantly, just would you say that he's more involved right now than in the past with just the construction or anything?
Maybe so. Steph is not the type to call you and tell you what to do, tell you how to do your job. He will give you his opinion when you ask. And sometimes he's got strong opinions, and sometimes he says, I actually don't know that much about this. He's genuine. Like there's no BS to him. So yeah, we absolutely ask his opinion on things. He's earned that. And like I said, sometimes he has opinions and sometimes he doesn't.
Right. And then one more for you. Every time
Draymond, yes, Draymond has strong opinions on everything. Yeah.
Oh, that's new. Actually, let me write that down.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the hypothetical trades out there, et cetera, anytime we talk about a star, it's the matching salary has to happen. Usually Andrew Wiggins' name comes up in that situation that way. Can you just very briefly just say how Wiggins fits into the future of the Warriors? Because everyone's ready to send somebody out in a hypothetical trade because that's fun to do. But like,
it's so easy.
What is a Wiggins?
Yeah, it's so easy to trade people 50 times on paper. No, look, Andrew had a really good year for us last year. He's super happy here. Coaching staff loves him. Players love him. I mean, he was great. We traded for him for a reason. He's here. We love what he's about. I understand why people throw his name into things. He's the new guy. He wasn't part of the championship core. But that doesn't mean he can't be part of it in the future. But look, we're always honest with guys too. I've talked to Andrew's agent many times over the last year, and he'll call and say, hey, I'm hearing this, and I'm always telling like, look, you should feel really comfortable here. You're really well liked. Am I going to tell you that you'll never get traded at any point? No, I would never tell anybody that. But that's, don't take that anyone watching it as like, yeah, they must be doing calls. No, like that's what we tell we don't ever want to lie to somebody. And that doesn't mean that's always what they want to hear, but we don't want to lie to a player and an agent because that looks bad if something does happen, even if it's a remote chance. So yeah, Andrew's great, and we're really happy with everything. And I feel bad that he gets thrown into the rumor mill, but at the end of the day, we've talked about it. Like he knows he's been through it before, in Minnesota. This is just the nature of the beast. You're a public figure.
Yeah. I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but maybe tell Steph that he's not getting traded just in case he's worried. I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but yeah. Anyway. All right. Kirk, thank you so much for joining. Really, really appreciate it as always. We fully expect the team to draft beep because you said that.
Yep, of course. Yep. No, makes tons of sense. I will read your tweets.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's not too many of them, but I think there probably are. Yeah.
All right, Kirk, I appreciate it, dude.